So how do we stop pavers from being slippery? Well, three methods really. First of all, cleaning the paver, then secondly, using some kind of surface treatment, and then thirdly is using some form of sealer to increase the friction on the surface. All these methods can be applied. The cleaning, obviously, we're trying to get mold and mildew off the surface, or getting food contaminants off the surface, or just mopping up and cleaning up any water spills so that we minimize this slippery when wet condition. That's not always possible, of course, so this is when we look at second option, which is the surface treatments. There we can treat the surface of the paver and adjust its characteristics so the water has somewhere to go when you walk or run on the surface, rather than you aquaplaning. So we can modify the paver with surface treatments. And then the third option is to use sealers. Okay, you can use a topical sealer that contains an additive, an anti-slip additive, that again increases the friction on the surface and makes it much harder for you to slip when you're walking or running. Or you can use penetrating sealers that penetrate into the surface and don't leave the paver surface slick and in a slippery condition. Paver sealers can be slippery if they're applied too thick and they leave a film on the surface that's very slick. You can avoid that by using thin mill sealers that will penetrate into the surface and leave a very thin film on the surface. That's one way. You can actually use additives in the sealer itself so that they increase the friction on the surface. And then thirdly, you can actually use just penetrating sealers that penetrate into the surface, the subsurface, but don't leave a film on the top, and that way they tend to be much less slippery. So what are the typical situations where an anti-slip sealer may be of benefit? Well, I think if you've got any kind of a commercial or retail environment where you're having customers walking or using walkways in your facility, and you have pavers as the walkway surface, then you need to consider an anti-slip sealer. This could be a hotel, entranceway into a hotel, interior or exterior. Could be a restaurant, could be a assisted living facility. Anywhere, like I say, if you're using pavers as part of the walkway, then you should definitely consider using anti-slip sealers as a way of making them less slippery. Around the home, very important, pool decks, driveways, walkways, patios, all these areas, we use pavers extensively, and again, an anti-slip sealer would definitely be of benefit, not only just to enhance the surface, but also to make it safe. Well, it really depends on the type of sealer. If we're using paver sealers, penetrating paver sealers I should say, they tend to soak in to the surface and are less slippery because they don't leave a film on the top surface. However, penetrating sealers don't bring as much enhancement, color enhancement, and change in appearance. So if we're looking for that, we'll move to topical sealers, and they can be slippery if they're applied too thick. So in that case, we use an additive to increase the traction, to increase the friction, so they're much less slippery. Well, it's some form of grit or sand that you either roll in or mix into the sealer itself, or you broadcast into the sealer while it's still wet. Typical anti-slip additives are made from aluminum oxide or from sand or polypropylene. It's a type of plastic, or polycarbonate. Each have advantages and disadvantages. The sand and the aluminum oxide are very hard wearing, but you can often see them in a clear sealer. And also they're heavy, so they can sink to the bottom and they don't get evenly dispersed if you're mixing it into the sealer. Polypropylene is nice, we see that a lot. It's lightweight, but it's not very hard wearing, and it can wear off pretty quickly. And then you have polycarbonate, which we use in our cover grip type anti-slip additives. That's kind of the best of both worlds. It's very hard wearing, it's made from like bulletproof glass, but it's also lightweight, so it stays in suspension in your sealer. So what should you look for in a non-slip additive? Two things really. You want to make sure that it's durable, hard wearing, something that's going to last in your sealer for many years. And then secondly, you want to make sure that it's not too heavy an aggregate, because that will sink to the bottom of your container, your mixing container, and it won't be evenly distributed in your sealer as you roll it out. If you're broadcasting the additive, it's less of an issue, but a lot of times we're going to be mixing that anti-slip additive into the sealer itself and then rolling it out. Polypropylene is popular. That's lightweight, so you know that does stay in suspension, but it does wear out very quickly. Sand and aluminum oxide, they're heavy duty, so they have good wear, but they're heavy. So again, if you're going to be mixing it into the product, then you need to be very careful it doesn't sink to the bottom of your mixing container. Polycarbonate, that's what we use at CoverTec. That's a very hard additive. It's made from bulletproof glass, very impact resistant, very wear resistant, but it's also lightweight, so when you mix it into your sealer, it stays in suspension much more readily. So we would steer you towards the CoverGrip polycarbonate anti-slip additive.